Hey folks, this is Akshay from Photographic and I'm back with another video on the Leica Q2. Now the last time we looked at the Leica Q2, we talked about three elements, the lens, the sensor and the battery life. And the reason why I was very excited about these three elements is because together they offer a rangefinder experience that really symbolizes Leica. I think they started sometime in the 30s or 40s, if I'm not mistaken. And they've been building film rangefinder cameras for this entire period. And so they have a lot of experience, of course, in that space. And a lot of those elements have sort of come down into the Leica Q2, which I discovered after I started using the camera. And so I'm quite excited to show those to you. Now last time I was shooting the video itself on the camera on Leica, and so I couldn't show you what I was talking about, but now I'm using my Sony a7 III and this is with the Sigma 35mm DGDN f1.4 lens. This is the new one that they've made specifically for digital cameras, mirrorless cameras, and specifically for Sony. So, by the way, this is a brilliant lens, as you can hopefully see. I've shot about a month almost with just this lens. I shot my sister's wedding with this lens, not professionally but just for fun. And I really love the lens. One of the things is that on the a7 III, it is a bit focus hungry and it wants to find human faces and even body parts like fingers. It'll prioritize that over anything else. So hopefully this works, but what I want to show you is the construction of the Leica Q2 and some of the elements on the lens. So like I said, the lens is a 28mm f1.7. It's a Sumilux lens, and one of the very important things that it has, which provides that rangefinder experience that I was talking about, is this lever at the bottom. So right now it's locked into the autofocus position, but what I can do is I can press this very small part and I can release it, and now I can move it freely and it's in the manual focus position, right? And so this is the entire throw of the focus. So it's hardly 90 degrees, which means that when I'm shooting like this, I can actually cover the entire range just by using one fingertip, right? And that way I'm able to very quickly focus throughout the entire range. So that's one advantage. Now the second advantage is that this is a linear focus system, and there are very few lenses that offer linear focus now, because what they do is they offer focus by wire. So for example, this 35mm that I'm shooting with has a manual focus ring, but when I rotate that ring, what it does is it just sends electrical signals to the lens, and the lens interprets those signals and moves the elements. So it's not a mechanical connection, it's a digital connection. And the trouble with that is there is no fixed ratio of how much do you move the focus ring and how much further or closer do you focus. So it's not a linear relationship between the movement of the ring and the amount of change in focus, because the camera uses all kinds of algorithms to make the focus easier. So for example, it would use an exponential algorithm, meaning that if you're focusing on something close, then the focus will move slowly, and so you're able to do critical focus if you're doing a close-up shot. But when you're beyond 10 feet, it then increases the focus exponentially towards infinity, because it doesn't matter where you're focusing on, 10 feet or 15 feet or 20 feet. That almost all of that is going to be in focus anyways, because the depth of field is going to be quite large at that point. So it does all those kind of calculations, which is useful, but it takes away the linear experience. And the advantage of this kind of a system is that I know that if I'm focusing on something that is roughly 10 feet away, then I need to keep the focus somewhere here, right, the tab somewhere here, and this is muscle memory. So now when I'm shooting, I can decide that this is my closest distance, this is infinity, and I know that 15 feet is roughly here, 10 feet is roughly here, 5 feet is roughly here, and this is 1 feet. And so I'm able to very quickly build that muscle memory. Now of course it takes time to build that, but there's that possibility on this camera which most of my other lenses don't afford. So that's one part of the rangefinder experience that is quite important and that the Q2 has. The second important experience is the distance scale. Now this is a little more common. So if you see at the top of the lens, there is a scale of where you are focusing. So you will know that you are focusing 3 feet away, 6 feet away, 10 feet away, like I was saying. And there's also this calculator which tells you what is the kind of depth of field that you're going to get depending on the aperture that you've chosen. I can get into the details of this in another video because it's quite a big topic. But essentially, you can do zone focusing using this camera because you can set the aperture to, let's say, f8, and then you can choose, you can know what is going to be in focus when you take a picture. So on f8, for example, right now, everything from 5 feet to infinity is going to be in focus if I keep the focus lever here, and then I don't need to worry about it. So if I'm shooting street, everything is going to be 5 feet or more away from me, and so I can just then shoot with that kind of zone focusing, and I never need to worry about focus. So those are some advantages of these lenses that digital lenses don't offer. Distance scale, by the way, is more common. So even some of the digital lenses have a distance scale, and so that's great. They've retained that experience. But the focusing lever and the linear focusing is you can only find that in very specific lenses. And then the last thing that I want to show was the frame lines. And so what happens with this camera is if I press a button here, I can get frame lines within my frame. And so what we are looking at is the entire picture captured by the 28mm lens, but we have 35mm frame lines within that. And so what this helps with is really street photography kind of scenarios. So what used to happen with rangefinders was that there was a separate optical viewfinder and the lens was separate. So it wasn't through the lens, it wasn't an SLR. We can go into those mechanics in another video. But what that meant was that you were seeing something from the viewfinder and then you were taking a picture through a different glass element, which was the lens. And so the viewfinder used to give you quite a wide view of everything that is happening, and then it would show you frame lines to suggest roughly what would be captured by the lens when you actually click the shutter. And so here, for example, if I was taking a street shot, I knew that this is the composition that I wanted. I wanted the wall and the curtain to cover the background of the photograph. And then I was, let's say that I was waiting for a subject to move into the frame. Now these frame lines give me the ability to actually frame my shot and then wait, because I can see what is happening outside the frame. And so when the subject is going to move into the frame, I can see that happening, and that is the way in which I can take the picture exactly at the right time so that I get the perfect shot that I was looking for. Now it has two other frame options. So this is the 35mm frame. If you press it again, it's a 50mm frame and then a 75mm frame. And the 50 and the 75mm frames I feel are a little bit of a gimmick, to be honest, because you can work with the 35mm frame, the distortion and the depth of field that you get with a 28 mm and a 35 mm is close. It's not the same, of course, but it's close, and so you can make it work, and this kind of a frame line is enough for the rangefinder style shooting that I was talking about. But if it goes beyond, if you find that you're constantly shooting at 50 mm, then really this is not the camera for you. You're losing out on more than half of the information that the sensor is giving you, and you you will end up being too far away from your subjects. You will not get the kind of experience that you are used to by shooting a 50 mm. And so if you're a street photography enthusiast or even a portrait photographer who mainly shoots with a 50 mm lens, this is probably not the setup that you want. And the 75 mm is just it's just in case there is something that you have to capture, and so that I feel is even more of a gimmick. So those are the three elements that really bring the rangefinder experience together on the Leica Q2, and I've found that very exciting whenever I've gone to shoot with this camera. Unfortunately, my city has been uncharacteristically foggy every morning. Like there's just not a shred of sunlight, very foggy, very cold, and so I haven't been able to shoot in the mornings as I had planned. But it's clearing up. Today was a little better, um, and so hopefully in this week I get to shoot a little bit more in the mornings, and I will share some of that with you. Alright, see you in the next one. Bye.